What up, y'all? This is Patrick Hayes. And today, what I want to do is I want to share a little tip with you for how to release trauma. Because trauma is a big thing for a lot of us, and some of you may have experienced this phenomenon where you might be completely over something intellectually, but for some reason your body is still afraid of it. And this is like a body-mind disconnect. And this is an indication of some sort of trauma that you're holding within your body. And it can become quite ridiculous to the point where you don't understand why you're afraid of it, because you know logically it makes absolutely no sense. So I have a friend that's really afraid of spiders and snakes and these kinds of things. And you know, when you think about it, it's ridiculous because you're like 1,000 or thousands of times bigger than this tiny little thing. Yet there's this fear response that is just that's inappropriate. It's like, what is going on here? Yet the body is afraid, and you're getting a physiological reaction of fear. This can also come up for all sorts of different things. I used to have actually this fear about a camera. I felt so uncomfortable in front of a camera that it was really strange. And in my head, I didn't know why. It was like, this is dumb. Why do I feel so afraid? It's not like the camera's like gonna kill me or anything, but it felt like that, or it felt like it was just this, you know, this hot energy breathing down my neck. So what I want to talk about is some techniques for being able to overcome this kind of physiological response that we have of fear towards certain things as a result of trauma. Now, this won't necessarily work for absolutely everybody. Because sometimes there are traumas that are really deep that you need to seek outside help, and you can't always nurse yourself back to health just with this technique if it's too deep. Because what it's going to require you to do is have the prerequisite of being able to be creative enough to talk yourself through something and to keep at least one aspect of your consciousness in balance, right? So in other words, your mind has to still be sovereign. Your body can be freaking out, but you have to have a certain measure of sovereignty with your mind in order to do this. So one of the prerequisites is first off, becoming clear logically in your mental faculties of the ridiculousness of this fear. And once you've gotten to this point, then you can start coming up with all of the rational and comforting opinions and perspectives that you have regarding this fear, how it doesn't make sense, how there's no reason to be afraid of it, all these things. And this is something that if you've been working on a trauma for some time, you probably have already done. But you might find that, you know, that alone, when you're in the face of this trauma, doesn't quell your physiological response of fear. Because really, it's like a cellular memory that is like afraid, and it locks up. But the way to think of it is like your body is kind of like a traumatized animal. Now, I had a little dog that I adopted for some time, I don't know, almost 10 years ago, and the dog had been traumatized, and it was really, really skittish and afraid of everything. And so I would do things like, you know, I would come out of the door, if the door slammed or something, it would like freak out and go into this space where it was just losing it. So what I learned was that if I could take the dog into my arms with compassion and care and just pet her really, really gently and just tell her over and over, like, it's okay, it's gonna be okay, and breathe deeply, and transmitted that energy to the dog, eventually the dog would chill out and it would be fine. And over a period of time, the dog stopped freaking out about stuff like that. So essentially it's the same kind of process, except for you're doing it for yourself. And this can be done through stabilizing mentally what all of your reasons for knowing that you're safe, stabilizing your relationship mentally to this particular thing, right? And then when you feel your body freaking out, using your mind to treat your body the same way that I explained treating the dog. So you have to be in a very loving space. The first thing you have to make sure you do is not let the fear in your body send your mind off into a spiral. Because if you start freaking out and the energy gets into your head and starts spinning your head, then you've lost, right? So if you can't do that, then you might need to, like I said, seek outside help. But if you can keep one toe, and I mentioned this in the other video that I made yesterday, if you keep one toe in your balance, in your groundedness, then you can use the consciousness from that space to calm your body down. So you're aware, your body's freaking out, you feel the tension, you feel all of your energy centers tightening up, you feel your body tightening up, your hands are getting sweaty, you're freaking out, right? Well, so this is the time for you to start saying with your mind, check it out, you got this, this is okay, like just breathe deeply and start talking to yourself. But you have to do it from a place of compassion. You have to do it from a place of deep empathy and love. Because this empathic love, this expression of compassion, this is actually the healing essence. And when you bring this essence into an experience of trauma, you bring this essence into an experience where you're freaking out, this essence will literally be that beacon of light that can shift the experience. But you have to hold that essence and focus on it. So what you're doing at this point is you're kind of partitioning your consciousness. You're being your own big brother or sister, and you're coaching yourself through the experience. So this is why it's so important that you have a very clear mental and rational connection to the balance that you're trying to communicate. Because in this moment, this is a critical time, and this is where you need to have a certain measure of access to the grounding, rational, comforting philosophy and mentality. Because when you have that, then you can transmit that to your scared self. So you're partitioning your consciousness and you're talking to yourself. You're like, okay, this is okay, you're okay, and you know this because of this and that, and you know this because of this and that, and you start sharing all of those grounding philosophies with yourself from that space of groundedness and compassion inside your mind. So your body's freaking out, but your mind is solid. And when you can do that, there are other ways of actually enhancing this. And you can do things like EFT tapping. If you haven't heard of EFT tapping, look it up. It's called emotional freedom technique. And essentially what it is it's you tapping on different meridian acupressure points on your body. And this moves energy through your body. So when you can have a balanced signal in your mind that is transmitting something that is grounded and positive, then the energy from your mind wants to move into your body. You're trying to direct it through your body so that the higher frequency can move the fear stuck energy through you. So by helping it move, by hitting these acupressure points, it actually gives it breaks up some of the stagnant energy of fear that is stuck. And then it helps the energy of the grounded consciousness to flow through the rest of your body. And this is tremendously, tremendously powerful. And this is actually how I overcame panic and anxiety attacks for the good amount of time that I was having them. And I was having really, really bad ones, like really bad ones, about a decade ago. Like to the point of almost, I won't even get into it, but it was really bad. But this was how I was able to do it. But what it requires is that in your off time that you really build that strong foundation of a new philosophy, of a new perspective. And when that's really grounded, then you can still have access to this when you're in your freak out states, and you transmit it to yourself from a place of compassion. And what happens over time is that you become very creative at being able to reframe and transmit space of balance to yourself. So that when you feel yourself starting to freak out, or even into the subtler realms where you start just having more negative thoughts, then what you can do is you can start tapping your energy centers and reaffirming to yourself the reality that you know is actually grounded. And it moves the energy really, really quickly, actually. So this is very much like you are playing the role of your own mentor, of your own guide, right? And this is what self-healing is. This is being able to hold space for yourself. So in a sense, you're bringing like your higher self in. Your higher self is the grounded one, and you're speaking to that wounded part of yourself. So you're feeling empathic and you're feeling compassionate for the wounded part of yourself. But you are in a grounded space and you are here now. The true presence of your consciousness is here. And as long as there's an aspect of that presence there, and you haven't gone fully unconscious, then the idea is to focus on that presence and then continue to bring that presence and that groundedness into the experience. And it will transmute the fear. And the more you do this, the more you actually truly heal yourself. So you can go around and you can look for those things that you're afraid of, and you can challenge them head on. But some things, they're going to just have to come up in time, because it's hard to engineer certain experiences of fear. But the idea is once you've identified those things that you are afraid of, that you are traumatized about, really work to ground the other side of it in your off time, meaning like when you're not having to face it due to circumstantial play out of events. So when you really work to ground yourself on the other side, then you have something to take to that experience, and you have something to call upon. And this whole concept of being your own guide is so important, because we all have a higher self or a higher consciousness. And we all know oftentimes when we go out of consciousness how we could have stayed in consciousness, what kinds of beliefs are actually more fundamental, that are actually more in alignment, that we could have been perceiving through in those moments. And so if we can take those into those moments, that is actually how we're able to transform some of those old traumas or those old stuck points within us. So thanks so much for tuning in. This is Patrick Hayes. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the comments below. And hit the bell button. If you haven't hit the bell button, you'll be notified every time I release a video. I'm super stoked to share more content with you. So thanks so much, and I'll talk to you next time.